Hi there, welcome to Lordrick's Room. My name is Lordrick. Alright, so I've actually already done this same exact video before on my other channel, but I rewatched it the other day and I thought it was pretty cringe. It's been over a year since I made that video, and I'd say that I've definitely improved a lot in that time in terms of the quality of my video production and also the quality of advice I can impart on you guys. So I figured I'd just refilm that video and upload it here. So if you've already watched that video, you don't really need to watch this video again unless you'd really like to help support me in the fight against the YouTube algorithm. But for the most part, this is going to be pretty similar to that previous video since, you know, my essays are the same as they were last year, but I will be more thorough in my advice this time around. Some may call this recycling content, but I would have to agree. Anyway, as you may know, I was accepted to Columbia University as part of the class of 2024. And even though that's not where I ultimately decided to attend, I still got in. So I figure for those of you who are going to be applying to colleges soon, and more specifically are interested in applying to Columbia, hearing some examples of successful essays can help you get the creative juices flowing as you write your own essays. As I understand, the prompts for these essays have changed ever so slightly since when I applied, but I think my essays can still serve as helpful examples for you guys. So in this video, I'll be reading my essays and then giving some tips and tricks to help you guys approach them on your own. I'll also leave timestamps in the description so you can skip around to my different essays. This video is going to be pretty packed with a lot of valuable information, which is why it's pretty long. So be sure to stick around to the end, rewatch it, take notes, and whatever else you need to do. And I feel like this is obvious, but I have seen it happen, so I'll say it anyway. This video is for educational purposes and to help you form your own ideas when writing your own essays, but do not, under any circumstances, plagiarize my essays or those of anyone else you see. That is a very not good idea and can lead to some pretty significant consequences down the road, so just don't do it. You all have your own ideas, so make use of them. And with that, let's get to reading. List a few words or phrases that describe your ideal college community. 150 words. Energizes me to leap out of bed every day. Doors wide open, embracing people from all walks of life. Fostering strong relationships on and beyond campus. Awe-inspiring people whose stories I can learn from, students and faculty alike. An abundance of fighting dreamers. Purposefully active in politics and global affairs. Opportunities to learn and practice new languages. Always has something interesting and meaningful to do, even on cold winter days. Limitless options for food. Good pizza and boba are a must. Learning that goes beyond the classroom, challenging my thoughts and perceptions. Expanding horizons, guiding me to a place further than the universe. Indomitable spirit and unabashed passion. A passionate, lifelong barcada I can call a second home. Does epic things. Alright, so while this essay is asking you to describe your ideal college community, it also serves as a why us essay, because when you're talking about your ideal college community, the hope is that you're also describing Columbia. Since this is a why us essay, you want to really show the school that you really want to go there. So if your ideal community also describes Columbia's community, then that would mean that Columbia is your ideal community, which is what you want to show through this kind of essay. A great way to do this is to show that your goals for college and Columbia's goals for its students align with one another. So if you hop onto Columbia's website, you can find their mission statement. And so when I was writing my essays, I wanted to make sure that the phrases I used could connect back to their mission statement. But I also think that if you only use words or phrases that reference back to their mission statement, it becomes a bit too obvious. So it's also good to throw in some other things that show your personality and individual interests more. adding some pizzazz. That's also why I opted to use phrases instead of words, because it allows for more unique combinations that are hard to achieve through words alone. Sadly, this prompt was not on the 2020 to 2021 application as far as I'm aware, which is a shame because I like this prompt. But that may be different in the upcoming cycle since the previous cycle was very abnormal in a lot of ways. Columbia also likes to change up its prompts every now and then, so it's entirely possible that we can see this essay prompt make a return in future years. But who knows? List the titles of the required readings from courses during the school year or summer that you enjoyed most in the past year. 150 words. A People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn. Interpreter of Maladies, Jhumpa Lahiri. 50 Psychology Classics, Tom Butler Bowden. Invictus, William Ernest Henley. Canterbury Tales, Chaucer. Sailing to Byzantium and The Second Coming, William Butler Yeats. Quite Frankly, Mark Halliday. Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. The Ballot or the Bullet, Malcolm X. Hamlet, Shakespeare. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, James Joyce. The Importance of Being Earnest, Oscar Wilde. Korean Grammar in Use Beginning, Various. Welcome to Korean, Nisley Y. Native American Creation Stories, Various. The Dream of a Ridiculous Man, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Tales of Amadou Kumba, Virago Diop. A Scandal in Bohemia, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Goodbye to Berlin, Christopher Isherwood. Remembering America, A Voice from the 60s, Richard Goodwin. The Fall of the House of Usher, Edgar Allan Poe. Rip Van Winkle, Washington Irving. Jabberwocky, Lewis Carroll. So my understanding was that this prompt is trying to get to know you better by looking at some of your literary interests. The specific titles you list here don't really matter because, everyone goes to different schools with different curriculums and different things you read, but you can tell a lot about a person from what they like to read. In previous years, this prompt would ask to list readings from the past year, but in the 2020 to 2021 application cycle, it was changed to readings from throughout high school. From what I know, applicants used to struggle to fill up the word count here because perhaps they didn't have that many required readings in the past year, so I think this change in the prompt is meant to address that. Something worth noting is that the prompt asks about required readings, not necessarily required books from your English class. This means that things like poems and short stories are fair game, as well as things you had to read for your other classes. So if you really enjoyed reading your physics textbook, go ahead and list it. But if you had to read Meditations on the First Philosophy and really disliked it, even if you think you'd look more intellectual if you list it, you don't need to list it. It's not like admissions officers are gonna know what you didn't list, so no need to put on a facade. The order you list these books also doesn't really matter, but I put them in mostly chronological order of when I read them. Again, admissions officers aren't gonna know what order you read your books in, so this isn't something you really need to think about. List the titles of the books you read for pleasure that you enjoyed most in the past year. 150 words. The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Bluebear, Walter Moores. Eleanor and Park, Rainbow Rowell. The Bride Test, Helen Hoying. The Kiss Quotient, Helen Hoying. The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, Mark Manson. Comparative Grammar of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and French, Mikhail Petruin, currently reading. The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli. Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, Neil deGrasse Tyson. What If, Randall Munroe. This Is Not a T-Shirt, Bobby Hundreds. The 4-Hour Workweek, Timothy Ferriss. We Were 8 Years in Power, Ta-Nehisi Coates. But What If We're Wrong, Chuck Klosterman. Goodbye Things, Fumio Sasaki. Magnus Chase, The Hammer of Thor, Rick Riordan. The Art of War, Sun Tzu. The Power of Kindness, Piero Ferrucci. The Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde. Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari. Blink, Malcolm Gladwell. So You Want to Talk About Race, Ijeoma Oluo. A Tale for the Time Being, Ruth Ozeki. My Phone Diary, me. Like with the previous prompt, this essay changed in the 2020 to 2021 cycle to include books you've read throughout high school. I imagine that applicants struggled to reach the word limit because not everyone is going to be reading so many books in their free time over the course of just 1 year. So now people have 4-ish years to draw from. I'd say my case was a little different because I had made a New Year's resolution that year to read a book every week, which is why I was able to fill up all the space. But even now, you shouldn't feel pressured to use up all your space. You should also, again, only list the things that you actually liked reading. There's no need to lie by saying you read War and Peace of your own free will and enjoyed it if that is not the case. If you did, then by all means list it. But with so many books out there, it's not like admissions officers are gonna have a list of books that they expect you to have read in your free time. This is really just about getting to know you better as an applicant. So honestly, if you solely read manga and webtoons in your free time, you can write that down. It's not like they're gonna look up the titles of every single book you list, so I imagine this prompt is trying to see whether or not you read at all in your free time and not exactly what it is specifically that you read. And again, order doesn't really matter, but if you're interested, I put these in order of how much I enjoyed them, with my favorite being at the top and then working my way down the list. List the titles of the print, electronic publications, and websites you read regularly. Humans of New York, The Salem News, National Geographic, The New York Times, Daily Mail, Time, ABS-CBN News, Next Shark, Goodreads, TV Tropes, TED, Webtoon, Shonen Jump, Nizzly for Youth Interactive. As you can see, I definitely did not use up the whole word count for this prompt, which is reasonable because no one is going to be able to keep up with like 30 different publications regularly. I just put down a couple of news sources that I checked sometimes to keep up to date with current affairs, and some other more fun publications where I spend a lot of my time. My guess is that this prompt is kind of just there to see if you keep up to date with current events and stuff, since that is kind of relevant to Columbia's mission statement. That's just a guess though, but I imagine you'd be all set for this prompt if you just listed a couple different news sources in there. You know, the term publication is kind of non-specific. Some of the things I listed are news publications, but some of the others are just like online forums and places where I can read serialized manga. So I guess if there's somewhere where you read things at least somewhat regularly, then you would be all set to write that down here. List the titles of the films, concerts, shows, exhibits, lectures, and other entertainments you enjoyed most in the past year. 150 words. 국제시장, 택시 운전사, 내 안의 큰놈, Your Name, A Silent Voice, Detective Pikachu, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, Parasite, Laid Back Camp, Dr. Stone, A Place Further Than the Universe, Quixote Nuevo, Huntington Theater, The Salem Witch Museum, Empress of China's Forbidden City, Nature's Nation, American Art and Environment, and Raven's Many Gifts, Native Art of the Northwest Coast, Peabody Essex Museum, A Seat at the Table, Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate, the Peace Corps, John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, Monumento de Santiago, Museos de las Casas Reales, America's Presidents, National Portrait Gallery, American Center Korea, U.S. Embassy and Consulate in Korea, War Memorial of Korea, Jeonju Hanok Village, Bulguksa Temple, Busoksa Temple, Hahue Folk Village, Jeonju National Museum, Jeonju Museum of History, Confucian Culture Museum, Jeonju Ultimate Music Festival, History of the Entire World, I guess, Bill Wirtz, Words Are Weapons, Naheem Watson. Once again, this prompt has been expanded in the recent cycle to include all of high school, so you've got a lot to choose from. This prompt is where you can really have fun and show off the different parts of your personality. To summarize, this prompt is looking at how cultured you are and what kinds of things you're interested in. I put a couple of things for each category that you mentioned, but you can really do whatever you want. Everyone's interests are different, so there is no right answer here. I will say though that since your goal is to stand out, you may not want to give very basic answers. Like, if you list things like a Frank Ocean concert or The Office, that's great that you're interested in those kinds of things, but those are very, very common answers and will not do much to help you differentiate yourself. being weird and wacky is totally welcome here because the people reading your applications are gonna be much older than you and probably are not gonna know all that much about the obscure and niche hobbies you have, so just let loose. Alright, so with that, we're done with the list prompts that Columbia gives. In my mind, these prompts do not have as big of an impact on your admissions as the next few prompts. Of course, they still matter and are factored in when deciding to admit an applicant or not, but I would think that the next prompts are more heavily emphasized because they are looking more at the applicant as a prospective student at their institution as opposed to just some teenager. If that didn't make sense, let me just show you by reading my essays. Please tell us what you value most about Columbia and why. 300 words. What does it mean to be human? It's a question without an easy answer, but one that Columbia incessantly pursues through storytelling. First, its students seek to understand what it meant to be human. The core curriculum examines humanities and the arts as a vehicle for storytelling, a story that spans thousands of years of human experience. Through small class sizes and intense dialogue, students challenge how they think about and view the world as they explore contemporary civilization and the frontiers of science. Together, students become informed, articulate, and proactive agents of change in a global community. But it doesn't stop in the classroom. Around campus and on the streets of New York, there are a wealth of people whose stories I can learn from. Columbia is a microcosm of the surrounding city, unparalleled in its embrace of people from all walks of life. I want to engage in meaningful discussions within this diverse community, topics ranging from politics and philosophy to pizza and Pokemon. Even if our views differ, I appreciate variety in opinions because it allows me to develop my worldviews in ways homogeneous thought cannot. Everyone's story deserves to be heard. Humanity is shaped by how we communicate with one another. The stories we tell define us. To engage meaningfully in the world, we must come to understand one another. To do that, I want to hear as many stories as I can. And with offerings in 57 languages, everything from Arabic to Zulu, Columbia will certainly have me prepared. And as I read these stories, I'll also be writing my own, woven together into the collective tapestry of humankind. As a child, I loved losing myself in stories. Now, I love them even more. They are what make us human. And at Columbia, the story never ends. This is another Why Us essay. I think they got rid of the first prompt I read since both of them basically get at the same thing, which is to see why you want to attend Columbia over any other school. This essay definitely took me the longest to write out of any essay for any school. It was probably comparable to how much time I put into my actual Common App essay. And it took me so long because I wanted to develop this idea of storytelling and communication since that was a common theme throughout my application. I think developing your own personal theme through your essays is key to having a successful application. That's outside the scope of this video, but if you'd like to hear more about theme, I have a video on that I'll link on screen and also down below. So in this essay, I focused on 3 things: Columbia's core curriculum, the fact that it's in New York, and my interest in foreign languages. And then I tied each of these into this idea of interpersonal communication and storytelling. Out of all the essays I wrote for my college applications, I'd say that this is the one I'm most proud of because I was able to write about 3 reasons I like Columbia in an articulate way with a clear and organized flow while also connecting it to the broader themes of my overall application. I'm no admissions officer, but I would say that this essay is the one that really helped me get my foot through the door. For applicants to Columbia College, please tell us what from your current and past experiences, either academic or personal, attracts you specifically to the field or fields of study that you noted in the member questions section. If you are currently undecided, please write about any field or fields in which you may have an interest at this time. 300 words. As a budding K-pop enthusiast, I was overjoyed to hear that I'd won a scholarship to study in Jeonju, South Korea through Nisley Y. I packed my bags, eager to spend my summer in an entirely new country. Kimchi and high-speed internet awaited. Kaja. However, it wasn't just the carefree, government-sponsored vacation I'd expected. From day one, classes were intense, taught entirely in Korean. Given that nobody in my class had any prior experience in the language, we faced a steep learning curve. 2 weeks later, we could finally hold a basic conversation. Fortunately, my host family spoke English and was willing to help me study late into the night. It was slow, but we were making progress. While I endeavored to improve my language skills, I also learned more about Korean society. I learned about their views on reunification, about how students face such immense pressure regarding the Suneung, about why I saw so many No Japan signs everywhere. I discovered so much about the place that had become my second home, doing my best to keep up with my slowly improving Korean. Even after coming home, I've continued my language studies. In between messaging my host family and other new friends, I've learned more about the country's role in global affairs, from its rising entertainment industry to its flourishing tech sector. Especially as we consider the growing influence of its northern neighbor, South Korea is certainly becoming an increasingly important player in the international community. In the future, I hope to work in the Foreign Service because I am deeply interested in learning about foreign nations and their interactions with each other. With one of the strongest East Asian studies programs in the world, Columbia can help make this a reality. Hopefully one day, I can visit Jeonju once more. So for most of my schools, I applied as either a linguistics or international relations major, but Columbia didn't have either of them, so the next best thing was East Asian Studies. It all worked out though, because in terms of what I wanted to write about for a Y major essay, there wasn't really much difference. When you apply to Columbia, you can list 3 potential majors that you're interested in, which is what you would write about here. I would recommend focusing on just one of those potential majors because having multiple majors to write about may leave you more likely to spread yourself too thin. But if you are undecided, I would recommend that you do write about multiple interests because it's a better justification for being undecided. Like, if you say you're undecided but choose to write about one field, why wouldn't you just select that field as your major? But if you do have multiple interests you can write about, that would show that you really are undecided. As for structure, I chose to focus on one specific experience that led to my interest in that field, which was my study abroad in Korea. I divided the essay into 3 sections: before going to Korea, in Korea, and after Korea, which was good for showing how my interest in East Asian studies developed. So if you're someone whose interest in a subject was spurred on by multiple events, I would say to choose the most major one to focus the essay around and maybe just mention the other events in passing. Again, you don't want to spread yourself too thin by trying to write about too much. I know the word count has been changed from 300 to 200 for these last 2 prompts, so being economic with your choice of topic is really key. And so overall, when looking over all your essays, you want to make sure that you've properly conveyed what your personality is like, why you want to attend Columbia, and why you want to study whatever it is you want to study. Supplemental essays are basically where you're trying to sell yourself to the school you're writing them for. So if your interests and their interests align, you'll be solid. And bonus points if you can tie it all together nicely into a unifying theme. There's also one new prompt from this past application cycle that wasn't around when I applied. I unfortunately do not have an essay example for you guys. However, this prompt is pretty similar to one of the ones I wrote for my Brown application. Obviously the schools are different and the prompts are different, but having something to look at is better than nothing. So I'll put a link to that Brown essay in the corner, one of these corners, and also in the description. So hopefully that can still be of help to you guys. And with that, I've finished reading my Columbia supplemental essays. Hope you found this helpful. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!